Hey guys, tonight we begin somewhere very warm, very sandy, and very, well, insect-filled. You're swaddled in embroidered linen, nestled in a gilded crib shaped like a sacred beetle. And despite your divine bloodline, you're still covered in mosquito bites. Because being born a pharaoh of ancient Egypt sounds glorious, until you realize you're basically a newborn celebrity, with no idea what's happening and a crowd of priests chanting spells over your crib. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere cozy around the world, let me know your local time in the comments. I love hearing where you all are drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes, or rather, squint, because the sun blasting through the palace's alabaster screens does not care that you're only 6 hours old. The room is hushed, heavy with incense and the rustle of linen robes. You've just been born to the royal family, which means your arrival has been heralded by priestly bells, public proclamations, and a literal boat parade down an aisle. And yet, here you are, tiny, sticky, and already sweating. The nursemaids are an efficient, linen-draped army. One records the exact moment of your birth in hieroglyphs on palm fronds. Another swaddles you so tightly you can't tell if you're an infant or a rolled-up carpet. You're oiled with myrrh, kissed on the forehead with lapis-dusted lips, and introduced to your first protective amulet, carved from faience, shaped like an eye, and probably still warm from a priest's pocket. This is divine birth, Egyptian style. You're not just a baby. You're a living god, technically the earthly form of Horus, with a divine right to rule and absolutely no idea how to hold up your head yet. It's a lot to live up to, but not everything is gold and prophecy. Let's talk comfort. Royal cradles are sometimes encrusted with gold, but also stiff. And your crib canopy is a woven net designed to keep out flies the size of grapes. Did we mention the scorpions? Yeah, someone already smashed one with a wooden spoon this morning. Welcome to ancient luxury. Outside your nursery, musicians perform lullabies on reed flutes, hoping to soothe you. But you mostly cry because, well, there's no diaper system here. The best they've got is linen triangles and more myrrh. So you squirm, and fart, and squirm some more. It's okay, divine or not. You're still a baby. Now, your mother, usually a queen or at least a high-ranking consort, won't breastfeed you herself. That would be too mortal. Instead, a team of carefully selected wet nurses rotates and shifts. They're vetted for health, divine approval, and, get this, astrological compatibility. One unlucky lady is dismissed after her horoscope clashes with yours. She leaves weeping and muttering about crocodile omens. You spend your early weeks under the constant gaze of scribes. They log every burp, giggle, or suspicious hiccup. Did you sneeze 3 times before dawn? That's a good omen. Did your eyebrow twitch during the full moon? Time to consult the temple oracle. Historians still argue whether this obsessive recording was political theater or actual belief. But either way, your bowel movements are now part of Egypt's national archives. And yes, they're gifts. Tons. Crates of alabaster toys, miniature carved hippos, even a gold-plated rattle that's way too heavy for your tiny hands. One noble sends you a goose, alive and extremely loud, which honks outside your nursery all day. You hate it. Despite all the fanfare, there's one thing everyone's quietly panicking about: survival. Ancient Egypt is brutal for infants, even royal ones. Fever, infections, parasites. The Nile doesn't care about your bloodline. So your caretakers smother you with magical spells, amulets, and frequent applications of frankincense smoke. If you cough, the high priest of Thoth personally recites an ancient spell over your toes. You're also regularly measured, not just your limbs, but your aura. Scribes compare your sacred glow to paintings of the god Ra. When a priest says you look a little too Apis, not enough Horus, it causes a minor panic. And then comes your naming ceremony. It's not just a name, it's 5 names. You're assigned a birth name, a throne name, a god name, a family lineage name, and a secret magical name only the priests know. One poor servant slips up and calls you by your birth name in public and is reassigned to latrine duty for the rest of the year. Still, there are moments of peace. Some evenings, the nursemaid rocks you in a swing made from sycamore branches while temple singers chant lullabies that have been passed down since before. You're maybe 2 years old now, just old enough to waddle confidently through polished limestone corridors. And already your life is a peculiar mix of divine worship and awkward toddlerhood. Everyone still bows when you pass, but you just want to chase a beetle across the temple floor. Good luck with that. Your sandals are gold-plated and way too stiff for sprinting. You live in the heart of a palace complex that smells permanently of lotus and heated stone. On the walls, painted gods watch your every move. Anubis with his jackal smirk, Badet with her calm cat eyes, and sometimes you wonder if they blink when no one's looking. You'd ask, but you're still working on complete sentences. Mornings begin before dawn, always. A temple priest enters your chamber bearing a bronze bowl of water perfumed with mint and a fresh linen cloth. You're not allowed to bathe like a normal child. No splashing or kicking allowed. Each cleansing is ceremonial, to purify your vessel for divine purpose. You mostly just scream the whole time. Then comes education. You sit cross-legged beside a statue of Maat while your tutor, an old scribe with 3 teeth and endless patience, guides you through pictographs. Your first lesson is how to write your own name in hieroglyphs. The second lesson is what happens to people who insult your name. Spoiler, they get erased from walls, which in Egypt is like being socially murdered. One day, you throw a tantrum and chuck your chalk at the wall. The scribe gasps, so loud he drops his reed pen. The chalk shattered on the image of Osiris. Everyone panics. A priest rushes in, throws sand over the broken wall, and starts chanting an atonement spell. For 3 days afterward, you're shadowed by an emergency falcon priest, just in case divine vengeance arrives via low-flying hawk. That's the level of pressure here. As Pharaoh in training, your education goes beyond reading. You're taught sacred dance, proper posture, don't slouch in front of RA, how to address crocodiles with reverence, and how to sit silently during offerings that last longer than most naps. Historians still argue whether royal children genuinely understood these rituals or just learned to mimic them. But you're great at faking solemnity between snack breaks. Oh, and your meals? Weirdly formal. You sit on a lapis stool while servants bring trays stacked with dates, roasted pigeon, and weirdly shaped figs. Everything must be tasted by a food taster first. Usually some poor guy who's been doing it so long his teeth are all stained from fermented honey. One time he faints after trying your stew, and everyone just screams for 15 minutes. Turned out it was just spicy. And the outfits. Every day, a new linen tunic. Some embroidered with tiny golden beetles, others stiff with ceremonial starching. You hate them all. They itch. Especially when you're forced to wear the miniature ceremonial crown during monthly sun rituals. It's too heavy, and it makes your ears sweat. But you do love the animals. The palace has a private menagerie. You have a baby baboon named Jehudi who flings fruit at nobles, and a sacred cat that refuses to look at you unless you're holding chicken. One afternoon, you and the baboon sneak off and dump an offering basket into the pond. A scandal. The priesthood debates whether it's sacrilege or just toddler mischief. You're forced to apologize to the Nile. You blow bubbles instead. Every move you make is recorded. Literally, painters follow you around, capturing your most dignified toddler poses. You once tripped and fell face first into a melon slice. There's now a temple mural where the melon is replaced with symbolic fruit of divine foresight. Good save, artist. Your bedtime? Not up to you. The high astronomer decides it based on the alignment of Sirius. So sometimes you're sent to bed mid-afternoon, and other times you're up until the moon hangs low like a quiet silver eye above the courtyard. Your nursemaid whispers old stories as you drift off, tales of pharaohs who never cried, gods who rode crocodiles, and the whispering dead who linger near the tomb walls. Sweet dreams, kid. And yet, for all the chaos and ritual, sometimes it's peaceful. You lie on cool stone floors during midday heat, sucking on honeyed dates, watching the light dance through carved pillars. Somewhere, incense curls skyward like the breath of invisible gods. The baboon is asleep on your foot. You're a tiny godling, sweating under ceremonial robes, dreaming of beetles and melons. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. You're older now, maybe 6 or 7, and the weight of godhood starts to settle differently. Less like a feather drifting through perfumed halls, and more like a stone tablet tied around your ankles. The adults have stopped calling you Little Lotus. Now it's all Divine One and Son of Horus. You miss being able to spill pomegranate juice without starting a minor crisis. Your days are ruled by 2 obsessions: ceremony and surveillance. Priests, advisors, and royal family members hover around you like flies on honeyed barley cakes. Everyone wants a word, a blessing, a nod. You sneeze, and someone reads it as a celestial omen. You stub your toe, and they declare a bad harvest. The royal astrologer begins charting your hiccups. It's exhausting. Every morning you're escorted, paraded, into the Temple of Karnak, where hundreds of barefoot priests line the colonnades, humming prayers older than language. The incense is thick enough to choke a sphinx. You process down the central aisle, draped in lapis and electrum, pretending not to notice the scratchy linen clinging awkwardly to your knees. Somewhere in the haze, a sacred ibis lets out a poorly timed squawk, and you nearly snort mid-blessing. You're not alone in this divine circus. Your cousins, other royal bloodlines, hover like vultures wearing perfumed wigs. One of them, Hormheb, always smirks when you mispronounce divine lineage of RA. The court scribes quietly log every slip. Historians still argue whether these records were kept for posterity or political blackmail. When not immersed in prayer or schooling, you're being sculpted. Literally, artists mold wax likenesses of your head, measure your brow ridge, and argue over whether your ears are too mortal looking. One sculpture in red granite captures you mid-yawn, and yet the final carving transforms it into the Pharaoh breathes the cosmic wind. You start yawning intentionally, just to see what else they'll mythologize. You're also beginning to notice the darker corners of your world, the secret corridors, the guards who carry sickles instead of staffs, and the whispers, always the whispers. One day you ask your nursemaid about the heavy door near the base of the palace stairs. She clutches her amulet of Isis so tightly her knuckles go pale. That, she says, is where bad dreams go to sleep forever. You don't ask again. By now, your lessons have turned to military theory. You're expected to lead armies someday, even if your arms are still too small to lift a proper khopesh. So you study maps drawn on goat hide, watch sparring matches in the training yard, and learn how to shout commands while maintaining royal posture. The soldiers pretend not to smirk when your voice cracks. There's also theology, so much theology. The differences between Horus as sky and Horus as avenger. The 7 sacred oils of embalming, and the mysteries of Duat, the underworld. One night, your tutor whispers, even kings must answer to the feather of truth. You dream of giant feathers chasing you through endless hallways. But it's not all stress and superstition. Sometimes, you sneak away with your bodyguard, a grizzled Nubian named Beck. He teaches you how to track dung beetles, whistle like a reed bird, and pick the ripest figs with you're 10 now, maybe 11. Old enough to understand what divine bloodline really means. Your family's been playing celestial dress-up for generations. And now it's your turn to keep the costume from unraveling. Each morning begins with purification. You strip down to your undercloth while priests mumble spells over bowls of cold lotus water. They dab your wrists, your chest, your forehead. One forgets and splashes your nose. You sneeze. He panics. A second priest insists this is a sign from the god Thoth. A third scribbles frantically on papyrus, convinced it's a date marker for the next flood. You try not to roll your eyes. Breakfast is silent unless the vizier speaks. Roasted duck, honey bread, and dates so ripe they collapse in your mouth. You chew slowly, knowing full well that even your digestion might be interpreted as divine approval of a trade policy. One time, you refused melon, and the ambassador from Punt had a nervous breakdown. You begin the day's work with state decrees. Well, technically, the vizier does all the writing. You just nod. You pretend to read, your eyes skimming hieroglyphs while secretly counting the number of times the god Ra appears in a single document. Today, 47. You stamp your seal. It's heavy and golden and shaped like a scarab. You hate it. The kingdom doesn't run itself, but sometimes it feels like everyone's pretending you do. This week's crisis? A river delta temple misallocated barley rations to the falcon priests instead of the jackal priests. The entire town is threatening a hunger strike. You sigh and murmur something about balance between the upper and lower realms. Everyone nods reverently. Later, you're dragged to a festival. Papyrus lanterns bob along the riverbanks. Drummers pound rhythms older than your ancestors. Dancers swirl in white linen, sweat shining on their backs. You try to smile for the people, but your cheeks hurt. There's a parade float of your face. It's 20 feet tall and terrifyingly off-model. You wave anyway. Back at the palace, an assassin is caught trying to sneak into the kitchens. You're told calmly over figs. "Handled," says the captain of the guard. "It was the honey vendor," adds your nursemaid. "He asked too many questions about your bath schedule." This is your normal now. Sometimes you try to read something not written by priests. You've hidden scrolls under your bed. Myths from Nubia, sea stories from Phoenician traders. A romantic poem about a fisherman who falls in love with a crocodile spirit. You read by oil lamp, careful not to get caught. The last time your tutor found a secular text, he cried into his beard. That same tutor now begins your training in divine judgment. He blindfolds you, brings forth two servants, one guilty of theft, the other falsely accused. You must decide. You guess wrong. He frowns. "Even the gods must learn discernment," he says, as if quoting some long-lost scroll. You're more concerned about the servant's broken nose. You start asking questions. Dangerous ones. What happens if the Nile doesn't flood? Why are only certain gods allowed statues? What happens when a pharaoh dies? The answers are always the same. You need not worry. Or worse, the gods will provide. You notice everyone avoids looking you in the eye when they say that. Your dreams become stranger. You walk endless hallways of sand. Statues whisper your name backward. A falcon pecks at your crown until it turns into a snake. One night, you dream a mirror. You look in, and there's nothing there. You wake up sweating. The next morning, you receive a gift. A ceremonial dagger with an iron blade said to be forged from star. It's cool to the touch, strangely heavy. From your uncle in the south, they say, you know better. Your uncle died 2 years ago. Historians still argue whether these early years hardened you or merely carved you hollow. Some say you began to lose empathy. Others say you were simply overwhelmed. Either way, something begins to shift. At night, you take the dagger from its velvet sheath and study your reflection in the blade. You ask it the questions no one dares answer. And sometimes, it almost replies. Puberty arrives like a sandstorm, loud, confusing, and strangely scented. You wake one morning to find your tunic tighter, your voice crackling like old papyrus, and your priests murmuring excitedly about omens in your skin's oiliness. Apparently, a pimple near your left nostril means Horus is watching over your harvests. You're not convinced. Your nursemaid adds another layer to your daily regimen. Scented oils, frankincense, myrrh, and something suspiciously pungent. You're told they balance the humors. All they do is make your skin shine like a polished scarab. The girls in the palace halls giggle behind their linen veils. You're mortified. And then there's the crocodile-dung. Yes, atun crocodile-dung, mixed with sour milk and honey, slathered on your arms, chest, and occasionally your cheeks. A sacred cleansing, the apothecary says. An ancient tradition. You're not sure how ancient or how much of a tradition, but no one seems willing to argue with him. You bathe in milk baths infused with blue lotus petals. You're scrubbed with pumice stones made from volcanic ash imported across deserts. You begin to associate the scent of jasmine with minor humiliation. Your attendants introduce amulets, tiny gold charms shaped like beetles eyes, falcons. Each is said to protect a different part of your spirit. Your Ka, your Ba, your Run. You secretly believe the one tied to your ankle is just to stop you from running away. A court astrologer presents your puberty horoscope. He charts your stars with a stick dipped in wine and babbles about conjunctions, river tides, and a goat-shaped moon. It's time, he whispers ominously. The pharaoh must begin adult preparations, which apparently includes sex education. You sit in a dim chamber while a blushing scribe reads from a scroll titled on the divine union. It contains diagrams, lots of them, some realistic, some disturbingly optimistic. A high priest coughs every few lines. You attempt to disappear into your own skull. And then the ceremony. You're led into a room thick with incense, clothed in shimmering linen, so thin it might as well be whispers. Your head is shaved completely, a symbol of rebirth, a symbol of submission to the gods. Also, it makes your scalp itch. Before a crowd of 300, you're declared of age. Drums echo, trumpets blast. People throw lotus petals and chant your name. You nod solemnly, trying not to sneeze from the flower dust. That night, you're introduced to a companion. She's about your age, maybe a year older, dressed in gold-threaded robes. She bows low and offers you figs. Her eyes are kind, nervous. You talk about birds. You don't touch. Later, your nursemaid winks. Soon enough, little lion. Historians still debate how much of Pharaoh's sexual maturity was performative and how much was, well, forced. Some believe these rituals were largely symbolic. Others suggest they were horrifyingly literal. You wouldn't know. You mostly remember the weight of the headpiece and the taste of slightly underripe grapes. Your dreams grow stranger still. You dream of jackals walking on two legs, whispering secrets in riddles, of mirrors that bleed, of your own body split into pieces scattered along the Nile, only to reform again, different somehow. You wake with sand in your bed and no explanation. The priests begin to call you living Horus more often. You're expected to lead small ceremonies, bless new granaries, touch the sick, but only after purification. Smile at the right moments. You practice in front of a mirror. You hate it. You get better anyway. One day, the high priest tells you something you never forget. The palace smells like roses and nerves. You sit stiffly on a polished obsidian stool, draped in your most opulent linen. A collar of turquoise and gold tugs at your neck every time you exhale. Your armpits glisten. You are about to be married. To your cousin. Probably. The court genealogists insist she's a suitable union, which is ancient Egyptian for not too many shared great-grandparents. Her name is Nefru or Merit or something longer that you forget the moment you see her. She's beautiful in that bored, statuesque way that highborn girls master early. You suspect she's also terrified. You relate. The wedding begins at dawn. Priests chant in unison, waving incense burners so enthusiastically the whole ceremony smells like someone set fire to a perfume shop. A golden canopy shades you both as a scribe reads an oath that includes phrases like divine seed and eternal prosperity. You both pretend not to wince. Lotus wine is poured. You each take a sip from an alabaster cup so fragile you fear sneezing near it. Then comes the ritual of anointing, sandalwood oil, frankincense balm, a smear of honey on your wrists. To sweeten the bond, the priest says, not quite suppressing a smirk. Historians still argue whether pharaonic marriages were romantic at all. Some believe they were deeply strategic, meant to consolidate divine bloodlines. Others say that, occasionally, young pharaohs genuinely liked their spouses. You think about that when Nefru leans over and whispers, "This wig itches like a scorpion's backside." You laugh, loudly. She grins. Maybe this won't be so bad. The feast after the ceremony is the real ordeal. Geese stuffed with dates, spiced lentil cakes, eel skewers, enough pomegranate wine to kill an ox. You nibble politely while your new father-in-law, a general with more scar tissue than teeth, tells war stories that may or may not involve eating parts of a horse. Your bride discreetly throws beetles to a temple cat beneath the table. You're gifted items both lavish and puzzling. Golden sandals, a pet peacock, a six-stringed harp, and a jar labeled fertility balm that you immediately pretend to misplace. That night, you're led to a special chamber. Silken sheets, rose petals, an enormous carved headboard showing Hathor smiling enigmatically. Everyone waits outside for signs of consummation. You and Nefer exchange a look. She rolls her eyes. You agree to throw the pillows against the wall for sound effects. It works. You lie in silence afterward, staring at the painted stars on the ceiling. She sighs and says, "Do you think we'll ever get to be normal people?" You don't answer, but the silence says enough. Days pass. You make appearances as a couple. You light ceremonial braziers together. You play Senate in the garden, while scribes secretly record your score to check for omens. You walk along an aisle, followed by an honor guard, 3 parasol bearers, and 1 suspiciously musical ibis. And then the pressure starts. Heirs. The Queen Mother begins sending herbal teas to encourage fertility. Midwives drop unsolicited advice in your hallway. One morning, a servant leaves a carved wooden cradle in your chambers. You're 15. One evening, you hear Nefer throwing up. Another evening, she doesn't join you for dinner. Later that week, you're told she lost the spirit. No one says the word miscarriage. You don't know what to say. She doesn't want to talk. So, you sit beside her in silence, holding a pot of warm honey water she never drinks. The gods are merciful, the priests say. There will be more chances. You nod. Then you walk to the edge of the palace garden, stare out at the dark Nile, and wonder what would have happened if you'd said no. Would anyone have let you? Unlikely. That's the thing about being divine. You rarely get to be human. The sun hasn't even cleared the palm trees when they're already knocking on your chamber door. A high-pitched squeak, followed by the dull thud of sandals on limestone. You groan into your pillow. The linen is cool, but slightly scratchy, and your head feels stuffed with sand. Another day of being a god. You rise because you have to, not because you want to. A servant draws back the sheer curtain, and the first light of RA spills across your chamber like molten honey. Outside, you hear the river lapping against the embankment and the faint bellow of a ceremonial bull. Inside, the air smells faintly of myrrh and something more sour, probably the fermented barley from last night's offering tray. You sit up. A priest is already waiting. He bows low, murmurs something about your divine responsibilities, and presents the first scroll of the day. You glance at the column of symbols. Grain tallies, temple renovations, 3 complaints from noble families, and an alarming note that someone's been stealing ibises from the royal aviary. You sigh. Welcome to morning admin. The ablution ritual comes next. Servants pour warm, rose-scented water over your hands and feet. Another dabs your face with damp linen. A boy applies scented oil to your scalp. Yet another carefully adjusts your ceremonial beard, making sure it curves just so. You're still half asleep when someone smears green malachite around your eyes. Yes, even pharaohs get makeup. As you're being prepped, you try to remember the last time you woke up without someone watching. You can't. You make your way through the corridor, flanked by guards in leopard skins. Down below, a high priest leads a procession into the temple. They wait for you at the sanctum, where the statue of Ammonius, your father, technically, sits in dark silence. You're expected to awaken the god. With music, a sistrum rattles. Incense plumes upward. You bow 3 times, chant a verse, and then anoint the statue's feet with lotus oil. Your arms tremble under the weight of ritual. You wonder if Ammonius ever gets bored of pretending to be asleep every morning just to be awakened again. Historians still argue how seriously pharaohs took their divinity. Some records suggest intense personal belief. Others hint they were just really good at playing along. You're not sure anymore. Breakfast is served privately. Flatbread, figs, cheese curd, and a honey cake shaped like a scarab. Your wife joins you, looking groggy but poised. You make small talk about a new obelisk project. She nods politely while stealing figs from your plate. You let her. Then, audience time. You sit on a high dais carved with falcons and lotus blossoms. Courtiers line up. One asks for permission to expand a vineyard. Another seeks justice for a stolen goat. Someone gifts you a live baboon wearing a necklace. You pretend this is all very normal. A royal scribe reads a poem written in your honor. You stifle a yawn halfway through. At noon, you're already exhausted. You sneak away for a moment, wandering the shaded colonnade near the water gardens. Palm fronds sway in the breeze. The fountain gurgles softly. You wonder if anyone would notice if you just climbed into the papyrus pool and floated away. A servant appears with another scroll. Of course, they noticed. It's time to review the military reports. You trudge back inside. There are skirmishes near Nubia, a food riot near Memphis, and rumors of a Hittite envoy disguised as a traveling merchant. The general asks for more bronze. You nod, already half listening, your eyes fixed on a single bee hovering near the window. You envy its freedom. Evening prayers require another change of robes. You wear white linen now, stitched with blue lapis thread. A priest paints a tiny sun disk on your palm. At sunset, you lead a torch procession down the causeway, chanting again. You try not to trip on your sandals. The crowd cheers. Someone faints. You smile tightly. Afterward, you return to your chamber, peel off the layers of divine costume, and collapse onto your mat. You glance at your reflection in a polished copper mirror, the eyeliner smudged slightly. You look tired. A servant asks if you'd like a bedtime story read aloud from the Book of the Dead. You wave him off. You already live it. You drift off as the last light dies behind the palm trees. You're dreaming of silence when the creak of sandal leather wakes you. It's not dawn yet. The chamber is lit only by the faint shimmer of oil lamps, casting long, fluttering shadows across the sandstone walls. You blink and sit upright. This isn't part of your usual schedule. A eunuch stands in the doorway, whispers of a visitor. Urgent, foreign, not announced. You groan, pull on a light robe, and pad across the cool floor. Your feet echo faintly as you descend into the antechamber, where two guards flank a cloaked figure. He removes his hood, a Hittite diplomat, and suddenly, your night just got far more interesting. He offers you a scroll sealed in blue wax. It smells faintly of cedar and sea salt. An official message, no doubt, probably riddled with veiled threats disguised as pleasantries. You read it slowly. He wants peace, or trade, or possibly both, as long as Egypt agrees to stop expanding so enthusiastically. You smile politely, gesture for pomegranate wine, and begin what will be a 3-hour whisper battle filled with compliments and sarcasm, so layered you could build a tomb out of them. Historians still argue whether these late-night meetings were formal diplomacy or unofficial power plays. You know the answer, both. The conversation turns to your navy. You casually mention how your boats glide faster now, with cedarwood hulls and better oars. He counters with a story about Hittite iron. You raise an eyebrow. He changes the subject. Eventually, he leaves, bowing low. You watch him go, then sigh. Politics, like sand, gets into everything. Back in your chamber, sleep doesn't return easily. You lay on your back, eyes tracing the stars through a small carved window above. You think of maps and borders and the invisible lines men are willing to kill for. Then something stirs in your memory, a dream half forgotten. A conversation you once had with a Nubian dancer who claimed stars are just the eyes of forgotten gods. You wonder how many are watching you right now and whether they're judging your performance. In the morning, another crisis. One of your sons, a smug, bejeweled princeling, has been caught rigging dice games in the palace courtyard. You try to be stern. He laughs it off. You wonder what kind of pharaoh he'll become. There's talk of a rebellion near Thebes. Your advisor wants to send troops, but you pause. You're tired of blood. Instead, you summon the chief priest and propose a new festival. Bigger than anything before. A pageant of light and fire, food for thousands, a celebration of divine unity. Something to distract, to soothe. He agrees, reluctantly. The scribes get to work. The priests start rehearsing chants. The cooks order more grain than the granaries can handle. You wonder what flavor of chaos you just unleashed. The day ends in your personal garden. Birds flit through papyrus reeds. The scent of blue lotus drifts in the air. A scribe sits beside you, reading a scroll of poetry written in your name. It compares you to R.A. Osiris, and something about a falcon devouring darkness. You half listen. Your mind drifts to the diplomat, to your son, to the dancer and the stars. Being a god is exhausting, but as the last light fades and the garden hums with crickets and ancient secrets, you allow yourself to smile, just a little, because for a fleeting moment, this kingdom feels quiet. You yawn as the procession begins, feet sore already, even though the sun has barely kissed the horizon. The scent of fresh-cut sycamore wood and warm incense floats through the air. You're being paraded again, yes, again, through streets lined with linen-clad citizens and bowing priests. Your chariot rattles softly over sandstone. Behind you, servants wave palm fronds like your very breath depends on it. Another new temple is ready. It's the third one this season. Your advisors insisted this one must honor Ma'at, goddess of balance. Though honestly, you think it's more about balancing the kingdom's budget than divine tribute. The crowd cheers. You nod solemnly, lifting your hand in that graceful, rehearsed motion. Your ring catches the sunlight just right. Gold gleams. Children toss flower petals. Somewhere, a woman faints. You're not entirely sure if it's from awe, heat stroke, or just boredom. Inside the temple, the stone is cool. You step carefully over a mosaic depicting the Nile gods. The priests chant, voices echoing in waves that bounce off the sacred geometry. You kneel, lay an offering, imported cinnamon and a carved lapis lazuli feather, and whisper a prayer, even though gods probably hear you more clearly when you're not muttering into your knees. Still, it's tradition. Later that day, you're back in the administrative wing of the palace, a massive chamber decorated with papyrus bundles, goat hide scrolls, and stressed-out scribes. You signed 5 decrees, approved grain rations, and grimace at a report titled Annual Wheat Rot Statistics, Lower Nile. This is not what the history scrolls will remember, but taxes matter. You assign more field inspectors, then attend to a sculptor who's drafted a new design for your statue. It's flattering, very flattering. Your muscles have never looked more heroic. You approve it instantly. Make it taller, you say, at least taller than Ramses. He nods gravely. That evening, you visit one of your granaries. It's the size of a small village, stacked with baskets of barley, emmer wheat, and dry dates. The overseer bows so low his forehead grazes the dusty floor. He's proud of this year's surplus. You smile and ask about rodent issues. He lies. Of course he lies. Historians still argue whether pharaohs really knew the state of their economy, or whether they floated above it all in a haze of rituals and gold. The truth? You try to understand. You read scrolls. You ask hard questions. But most days, the answer is the same: the Nile provides. You wonder if that's a prayer or an excuse. Night falls, and you attend a feast with merchants. Not nobles, not priests, traders. This is rare. They bring gifts: coral from the Red Sea, amber from the north, incense bricks the size of bricks. You listen as they share stories of crocodile-infested waters and sea raiders with silver teeth. One merchant offers you a curious object, a mirror made from polished obsidian. You see yourself in it, worn, regal, tired. You thank him and give him a goat. Trade is good. Temples are grand. But under it all, you wonder, do they cheer for you or the gold around you? Still, as you return to your private quarters, the moon glinting off the Nile in the distance, you pause for a moment at your balcony. You look over your city. Even if their cheers are shallow, they're still loud. And for tonight, that's enough. You wake up, again, with the muffled sound of paws scrabbling on polished limestone. It's not a servant, nor an assassin from Upper Egypt. No, it's your pet cheetah, who insists on chasing its own tail before sunrise. Because of course, as Pharaoh, you don't just have pets. You have a sacred entourage of divine beasts, creatures gifted by allies, bribed out of distant deserts, or handpicked by priests for their symbolic worth. And you, poor child god in a very itchy linen tunic, must treat them all as part-time deities. Your quarters, gilded, perfumed but perpetually warm, smell faintly of animal musk and papyrus ink. There's a gangly ibis perched near your water basin, and someone has tied a garland of blue lotus flowers around its neck. You vaguely remember it being declared the reincarnation of Thoth last week. You're not entirely sure if that was a joke. Even before breakfast, there are duties. A monkey named Henu, dressed in a teeny sash, is ushered into your chamber. He's been taught to offer you figs on a polished plate. Occasionally, he eats them himself and smirks. He's everyone's favorite. You try not to be jealous. During processions, the animals ride too. You're on your golden bark, carried by trembling attendants. And there, trotting beside you, is a tiny lion cub in a jeweled harness, gifted from a Nubian delegation. The lion makes a sound halfway between a yawn and a growl. You wave gently to the crowd, careful to look divine while also wondering if the cub has had lunch. The palace is a menagerie. There are crocodiles in sunken pools, cats lounging on linen cushions, gazelles with anklets of bronze, and even, according to gossip, a hippo that once lived briefly in the royal garden before being politely relocated. Historians still argue whether it was your hippo or your grandmother's. No one wants to take credit. Your favorites are the cats, of course. Some sleep at your feet during council meetings. They purr when you dictate royal decrees, making it hard for scribes to keep straight lines. One even has a tiny golden earring, which keeps falling off and causing brief diplomatic incidents. Occasionally, priests declare a pet to be holy. That changes everything. Now it needs offerings, music, incense. You're expected to whisper morning prayers to a duck named Seti. The duck looks indifferent. You recite anyway. You once had a turtle that lived exactly 4 days before vanishing. Some said it was an omen. Others claimed it was eaten by the palace cat. Your vizier recommended a commemorative statue. You approved it half asleep. The thing no one tells you? Pharaohs were not above tripping on animal poop. That happened once in public. You had to blame it on a nearby official and order his retirement. The cheetah knew, though. It still gives you that smug look. Pets are part joy, part burden. They soften your divine image for the people. The king who pets monkeys, but also complicate every ritual, every schedule. You once delayed a war meeting because a goose refused to get off your ceremonial cushion. And yet, at night, when the torches are low and the palace quiets, a sleek black cat curls against your side. You run your fingers through its soft fur, your bare feet on cool tiles, and for a moment you feel not like a god but a child, in a palace filled with creatures just as confused by royalty as you are. You squint at the blinding Egyptian sun as you step into the palace courtyard. Except today, you're not here for royal decrees or scribes bearing grain reports. You're here for a goose. A particularly irritable goose who has, for some unfathomable divine reason, been declared sacred. You are the pharaoh, yes, but today the goose rules. Being pharaoh means dealing not only with temples and tribute, but also with the palace zoo, an unofficial, ever-growing collection of animals that range from majestic to mildly absurd. Your pet list, if you could call it that, includes leashed cheetahs with gold collars, monkeys that wear miniature linen skirts, sacred ibis birds that have their own bath attendants, and yes, that furious goose that keeps hissing at the high priest. You try not to trip over the stray kitten that darts under your feet. Bastet's children are sacred, after all. Everyone bows to you, but they also whisper, the pharaoh adores cats. You do. You really do. But the real reason you keep them close? They kill the palace rats, and there are more of those than there are scribes. Your monkey, Nesset, is perched on your throne again. He's somehow stolen a wig. You can't scold him too harshly. Last week, he saved your ceremonial headdress from falling into a plate of fermented fish during a banquet. Historians might debate whether pharaohs truly kept monkeys as companions, or if this detail was just exaggerated art. You, however, know it's real, especially when Nesset decides to throw date pits at the vizier. But pets aren't just for company. They're public relations tools. Cheetahs symbolize speed and divine hunting skills. Cats mean you're favored by Badet. Even the birds get roles. You recall a temple scene where you were required to bless a a line of ducks, one by one, in front of cheering priests and confused townsfolk. Animal care is serious business. You've appointed a divine animal steward whose only job is to bathe, feed, and, once a year, gift-wrap the horns of your ceremonial ram. He's the most powerful man in the palace next to your high priest and your mother. His official title translates roughly to feeder of the sacred beings, though behind his back, people just call him the goat guy. Your harem's courtyard has become something of a sanctuary. Women coo over lapdogs brought by Nubian envoys, and birds with feathers dyed in saffron packet grain arranged in tiny gold bowls. There's even a crocodile in the outer pond, though no one's entirely sure if he's tame or just old. The high priest insists it's the same crocodile that appeared in your dream last harvest. You name him Bubbles, and he hasn't eaten anyone. Yet, you recline in the shade of a fig tree, stroking a long-haired, desert-bred cat. You can't help but wonder, do these creatures understand who you are? Do they see a living god, or just another hairless mammal trying to survive the heat? Scholars today still argue whether these animal companions were true pets, symbols, or ceremonial tools. To you, it hardly matters. When the day ends and everyone else is bowing and scraping, your cat just yawns and turns its back to you. You admire the ibis standing by your writing desk. Its beak curves elegantly like the crescent moon, and when it blinks, it looks almost wise. You've heard the priest whisper that Thoth himself takes that shape to watch over scribes. It's comforting, in a way, except when it poops on your scrolls. Then, not so much. A horn sounds in the distance. Not a war signal, just the palace baker announcing fresh honey bread. Nesset the monkey bolts across the room, shrieking like a tiny general, pursued by two terrified palace dogs. One day, your legacy will be etched into obelisks and sung by generations. But in this moment, it's enough to laugh, pet your sleepy cat, and try to avoid slipping on parrot. You're finally a few decades into this gig as Pharaoh. You managed temple politics, survived at least 3 plagues of locusts, and graciously accepted 8 golden goblets, too many from neighboring dignitaries. So what's left for the living Horus to worry about? Royal pets, obviously. And not just cats. Though yes, there will be cats. You're about to become intimately familiar with a menagerie of sacred, slightly spoiled, and sometimes dangerous animals. The palace smells like incense, sun-baked stone, and fur. You begin your morning as usual. Servants silently rolling up the reed blinds to let the Niles glare in, while an ibex perches smugly on a nearby stone ledge. That's Minra, your brother's favorite. He was gifted to you by the priesthood of Thebes as a symbol of prosperity, though mostly he likes to chew your papyrus scrolls and bleat loudly when you're trying to impress diplomats. Cats, of course, hold court here as much as you do. Sleek, almond-eyed creatures that roam freely between chambers and temples. They're not merely pets, but manifestations of Batet, goddess of home, fertility, and inconveniently, vengeance. Everyone acts normal when they curl around your leg or knock over a sacred bowl. But if a cat dies, mourners shave their eyebrows in grief. You did it once, sobbing softly while trying not to smudge your eyeliner. Then there's Ipit, the crocodile. Technically, he belongs to Sobek's priests in the temple sanctuary, but you insisted he be brought to your lake garden for educational purposes. The handlers nervously nod as Ipit floats like a log, wearing a gilded nose ring and, once, a garland of lotus petals. Historians still argue whether pharaohs actually kept crocs in their gardens, or if this detail is exaggerated. But if you're going to live like a god, what's a little crocodile among friends? Your favorite, though, might be the goose. Or perhaps geese, plural. These aren't your average honking barnyard fellows. These are sacred geese, dyed saffron or cobalt, depending on the festival. They strut around your open courtyards like miniature viziers, loud, arrogant, and oddly respected. At your annual harvest ceremony, one even made off with a gold-threaded sash. You let him keep it. Let's not forget the monkeys. Small, clever, and endlessly mischievous, they scamper along the roof lines and sometimes sneak into banquet halls, stealing pomegranate seeds and fake beer glue. You once caught one painting its tail with blue lapis pigment. Adorable, but concerning. Pets are more than playthings. They're symbols, omens, and extensions of your divine persona. If you appear in public with a cheetah on a leash, yes, that's a thing. It isn't just fashion. It's power, untamed but controlled. You're reminding the people that you're both protector and predator. And also, that you have better pets than they do. Of course, not all animals are friendly. There's the sacred bull kept in a special courtyard, tended to by dozens. He's treated better than most visiting kings. You once tried to offer him a fig and got lightly headbutt for your trouble. Divine bovines apparently don't snack between rituals. Historians note with mild amusement that the line between pet and holy symbol is blurry. What looks like your personal menagerie is, in fact, a mobile display of theology. Some beasts live longer than viziers. Some receive burial rites more elaborate than your cousins. And when they pass, they're tombs. Your favorite hound, whose name roughly translates to bark pillar of the sun, was buried with a bronze collar and a minuscule scroll of prayers. You personally attended the funeral, wearing a linen robe embroidered with tiny jackals. What's strange is how comforting they all become. As Pharaoh, you're alone at the top, wrapped in ritual and expectation. But these creatures, they don't care about your taxes or your shrine to stature ratio. They just want treats, or to knock over your ink jar. So you wander your garden, a goose nibbling your hem, a monkey on your shoulder, and a cat trailing behind. Each a tiny tether to something delightfully mundane. You wake up with the uneasy feeling that someone in the palace wants you dead. Not exactly the vibe you'd hoped for as a living god, but here we are. The harem smells faintly of lotus oil and mild resentment. You glance at your eldest son, the one who's been unusually polite lately. Too polite. You begin to suspect he's reading too many old scrolls about succession laws. Pharaoh family dynamics weren't just complicated, they were a strategic battlefield in linen. Your queen wasn't just your spouse. She was a political alliance wearing a kohl eyeliner. Some queens came from foreign dynasties to keep peace treaties intact. Others? Local nobility with sharp minds, sharper tongues, and enough influence to raise an army behind a decorative screen. Now, picture this. You're sipping a date wine cocktail, staring at a relief of yourself smiting enemies, when a scribe shuffles in and coughs. You know this cough. It's the please don't kill me for saying this cough. The high priest of Ammonius has received word. Someone spreading rumors that you're impotent. A dangerous word in a kingdom where divine power is linked directly to your ability to produce heirs. You feel your blood pressure rise. Not great, considering the likely cause is your brother. Fraternal betrayal was a classic Egyptian royal pastime. Historians still argue whether Ramses III was actually murdered by his own son Pentar, or if the infamous harem conspiracy fizzled out before the final poison reached his chalice. What's undeniable is that palace intrigue wasn't whispered gossip. It was written into temple walls. You've taken to sleeping with a dagger under your papyrus-stuffed pillow, even in your dreams. Courtiers hover in the background, smiling too much. You find yourself questioning every gift of figs, every servant's sidelong glance. There's always a chance your own vizier is penning oaths of loyalty with one hand and forging your death certificate with the other. And then there's your children. Too many of them. You thought naming them all variations would help you remember who was who. It didn't. Some are training as priests. One is definitely trying to resurrect that old sun god monotheism thing again. Another is writing sappy poetry about crocodiles. You pretend not to notice. Your main queen, clever and composed, manages the royal household like a general. She knows which concubines have which ambitions and makes sure none of them get near your more gullible sons. But sometimes, late at night, she'll murmur about wanting more say in matters of state. You nod and pretend to fall asleep, wondering if that's a threat or just pillow talk. You once caught your cousin bribing an embalmer to fake a death. He wanted to disappear and come back as a mystical heir. Instead, he just disappeared into the Nile. Still, despite the dysfunction, You can't help but feel weirdly comforted by it all. This chaos is your normal. You've never known peace and quiet, not without suspecting it's the calm before the dagger. You start to see it not as betrayal, but tradition, like elaborate wigs or gold leaf sandals. If nothing else, all this plotting keeps your mind sharp. You play chess with courtiers like it's war. You gift rare myrrh to daughters who behave and assign diplomatic marriages to sons who act out. Occasionally, you throw a lavish festival just to distract everyone. Of course, you keep your personal food taster very close. Closer than your favorite wife. Closer than your cat. Because in the palace of Pharaohs, love is real, but so is arsenic. It's ironic, isn't it? After decades of dodging assassins, manipulating court factions, and living like a semi-divine rock star, it's a mosquito bite that finally gets you. You, the God King, the living Horus, brought down not by armies, but by something smaller than a lentil. You try to ignore it at first. The headache, the sweat, the stomach turning on itself. Maybe it's the figs again. But by the second day, your vision's blurry, and even your pet baboon looks worried. The royal physicians gather in a tight circle, muttering about bad air, angry gods, and imbalanced humors. No one mentions the obvious. You're dying. Egyptian pharaohs didn't go gently into that eternal night. Some went dramatically, like Akhenaten, whose health was always suspect. Scholars still argue whether he died of Marfan syndrome, poisoning, or sheer stress from inventing a new religion and alienating the entire priesthood. Others like Tutankhamun, oh, poor Tut, went messily. CT scans suggest everything from a gangrenous leg to a chariot crash to a fatal chest infection. What's worse? Someone removed his sternum post-mortem. And no, that's not part of standard embalming. As you lie there sweating through your saffron bed sheets, you wonder which god is coming for you. Anubis? Osiris? Maybe it's just the overworked embalmer sharpening his tools outside. The line between priest and mortician gets blurry fast. In your fever dreams, you remember Pharaoh, second in Ratau, found with brutal wounds to his skull. Historians debate whether he died in battle or was ritually executed. Either way, his mummy didn't get the spa treatment. The poor man was wrapped mid-rot. Meanwhile, your advisors argue just outside your chamber. Who will rule next? Should the tomb be finished? Can they afford more turquoise? You want to shout? I'm not dead yet, but your tongue won't move. Some pharaohs were poisoned. Some fell from grace. Others just fell. Ramses II lived into his 90s, basically ancient Methuselah. His teeth were worn, his spine curved, and he outlived at least 12 sons. There's something both majestic and mildly tragic about that. You, on the other hand, feel your body betraying you minute by minute. The palace grows quieter, like it's waiting. A priest starts the opening of the mouth ritual a little too early. He gets scolded. Through the haze, you wonder, will your tomb be safe? Will grave robbers beat your soul to the field of reeds? You instructed your architects to build secret corridors, false chambers, curses etched in red ink. But you've read the scrolls. Nothing stays hidden forever in the Valley of Kings. You make peace with the truth, despite the gold, the gods, and the crocodile-shaped incense burners. Your fate is just like anyone else's, fragile, strange, and a little anticlimactic. Your last thoughts aren't of war or tribute or that one concubine you should have married. You think of the Nile at sunrise when a mist turns the reeds silver. You think of your mother's laugh before she became the royal mother of the two lands. And you think, vaguely, that your successor better not mess this up. And then your chest stills, the fan stops moving, and the sun rises exactly on schedule. You're no longer here in the palace. Your body is being washed with palm wine and natron by men who never speak your name aloud. Your brain? That's long gone, pulled out through the nose with a crooked bronze hook. There's no dignity in death, even for a god. As your organs are placed in alabaster canopic jars, your soul, the BA, begins its long, tedious journey. You fly, awkwardly like a confused bird with a human head, through the Duat, the underworld. It's not flames and brimstone. It's more bureaucratic. There are gates, passwords, demons with names like He Who Eats Shadows, and more crocodiles than any afterlife needs. Historians still argue whether these texts were metaphor or a literal map, but to you it feels real. You float past walls of fire, fields of reeds, and snake-headed boatmen who don't make eye contact. You chant the right phrases, thank the scribes who drilled you on the back of your four. Meanwhile, your mummy is being wrapped. It's a whole event. Gold amulets tucked beneath every fold. Priests chanting spells from the Book of the Dead. Your favorite dog is being buried with you, slightly less thrilled about that than you are. Outside, mourners wail convincingly. Some were paid to do it. Others genuinely like your tax policies. And then comes the judgment. You stand before Osiris, who, let's be honest, looks both regal and exhausted. Your heart is placed on one side of the scale. A feather, the symbol of Ma'at. Truth on the other. If your heart is heavy with guilt, it will be devoured by Ammit, the crocodile lion hippo monster who's been eyeing you like a snack. But somehow you pass. Just barely. Must have been the time you forgave that farmer's debt during the bad flood year. Good karma. You sail away, finally, toward the field of reeds. An eternal Egypt, minus the sandstorms and assassination attempts. There's barley, sunshine, no taxes, and maybe, just maybe, someone will remember your name correctly in 1,000 years. And now, everything grows soft. The torches flicker lower in your tomb. The priest's chants have long faded into memory, and the desert wind hums gently outside, brushing against limestone like a lullaby. Time no longer matters, only the gentle rhythm of stillness and shadows. You walk through golden fields where papyrus brushes your ankles. The Nile glitters on the horizon, slow and kind, stretching far beyond this life and into something gentler. You hear distant laughter, perhaps from a festival long ago, or maybe just the breeze teasing the reeds. Everything sharp begins to blur. The burdens of a crown, the weight of ceremony, the whispers of betrayal. They dissolve like sand slipping through fingers. Only the peace remains. Let the world spin on. Let others wear the headdress and argue in the sun-drenched halls. You have crossed through, and all that's left is calm. Just rest, Pharaoh. You've done enough.